All right, my first vehicle that I ever owned as a kid was a Femi Honda 50. The Flying Nun had one on her show, and they called it the Flying Nun Machine. And it was the only thing that I could afford. I was a paper, I had a paper route and I made some money. And you'd work all week long and you'd only make like $10. So when everybody had their Rupp mini bikes and their Yamaha mini Enduros and their Honda Trail 50s and 70s, this guy said he'd sell me this Femi 50. And I said, well, what does it look like? And I go there and I was kind of depressed, I see this thing and I says, how much do you want it for? And he says, $65. So I buy this thing, and I was so little at age 12. This is 1969 I bought this thing, and the vehicle was like a 63. They dumped 1 million of these things on the United States. You meet the nicest people on a Honda. They made a song about it, and the Beach Boys. And first thing I did when I got home was rip all this plastic off. It was so small of an engine, you could start it with your hand, but it had an electric start on it. It was ridiculous. It had an enclosed chain guard, had this fender that's sweet. I chopped that off, I chopped the exhaust off, trying to get everything down as light as possible so I could keep up with my buddies. And I could hardly keep up, and I only weighed like about 80 pounds at the time. And it wasn't made for the trails, and we were riding them through the fields and stuff. And I only had it for a short time, and the battery went bad. So I didn't have the money, and I go to the Honda dealer and I says, how much for this battery? And they look up, for a Mini Trail 50, the battery was only about like this big. The battery was like $20 at the time. But because this thing had an electric start, it had a battery that was as big as a Harley. And he wanted $65 for it. And I was like, man, the whole vehicle cost $65. He goes, well, that's what you get. So I go home and I didn't have the money. So the mechanic there told me what had happened was all the scale dropped down. It was shorting out at the bottom of the battery. So I'm thinking, well, if I get that crud out of there, it won't be shorted out anymore. So I take the little plastic plugs off the battery, and I had a little bowl of my mom's, and I dumped the acid out. I got all the acid out of the battery, and I had a sheet going across there, trying to filter it out, and all this crud was coming out of the battery. Then I put fresh water in there, and I got another bowl, and I was saving that, and I got a lot of the crud out. So then I just took a hose, and I was wearing goggles, and I'm blowing water into the battery. Well, I'm looking in there, it was kind of a see-through battery, and you could look through the little holes, and you could still see a lot of junk in there. So I'm thinking, like, well, what would dissolve the crap off the plates of the battery? So I mix up this baking soda and water, and now I got a little turkey baster, and I'm sucking up this baking soda water, and I'm squirting it into the battery, and I get this stuff in there, and it's going, well, it's gurgling and playing. All of a sudden, stuff was, my brothers are laughing and stuff, and they're going, this is never gonna work. And I did that a couple times, and then I rinsed it out with fresh water, and I kept on shaking it and everything, and I actually got it all cleaned out. You could see these plates that were clean now. Then I took that strained, acid, and I used the turkey baster, and I put the acid back into the battery, and I was a little light, so then I took that other stuff that was rinsed out, acidy water, and I used the turkey baster and filled that back up, and then I had to add a little bit of water. So my mom had a dehumidifier down in the basement, and I took this water from under the dehumidifier because there's no minerals in it, and I topped off the battery, and I put the battery charger on there, a 2-amp battery charger. And my brother's going, it's never gonna work, it's never gonna work, and left it on there overnight, checked it with a voltmeter, and it was 12.5 or 13 volts on it. And actually, it didn't even need the battery, really, it's like just to get it started, and then, you know, because we wouldn't even use headlights at nighttime. We'd ride right down the road with no headlights because you didn't want to get caught. And it worked. You know, the battery was fine. And my brothers would always bring that story up and cheap, you know, and I says, I didn't have any money at the time. And I'm watching Jay Leno, and he's got this old 1895 electric car, and the batteries were that old, and they were trying to revive this thing. And I call up my brother and I go, look at Jay Leno, they're doing the same thing I did with the old Honda. And he started laughing. So I guess when you don't have money, it makes you end up being a little bit, your ingenuity comes out.